Welcome to Great Day St. Louis. We are so glad to be back with you live after a week off.
Seems like it's been a month or so. But we are going to start the show off on a rather serious note with a discussion about miscarriages. Chances are you or someone close to you has experienced a miscarriage. What's the best way to handle such a loss? And a hard one is, how do you comfort a friend? We're going to talk about that next.
And then on the flip side, there are several options you may want to try if you're having trouble getting pregnant at all. From a holistic approach to IVF, we're going to run through a few of those for you.
So we're starting off with this emotional topic today, something that affects 1 in 4 women, and it has affected the Great Day family: miscarriage. Now, I had 2 between my 2 sons, and I remember wondering if I would ever have a second.
Right.
And it was, you think I did something wrong? Why 2 in a row? I mean, it was a very, very emotional time.
It's definitely an emotional roller coaster. I had a miscarriage just 5 weeks ago, and what helped me and is helping me right now is talking about it with people who have experienced a pregnancy loss. And one of those people is a familiar face to Great Day viewers, Suzanne Tucker with My Mommy Manual. Suzanne had 5 miscarriages, and today she is sharing her story.
So my name's Suzanne, and we have 4 children, 11, 9, twin 2-year-olds, and I have 5 babies in heaven. We've had 5 miscarriages. I think miscarriage is one of those things you don't really get till you go through it. I felt confused. I felt guilt. I blame myself a lot. I remember after my second one, I had done a hot yoga class somewhere in my early pregnancy, and my doctor's like, it had nothing to do with it. But you do. As moms, we look to ourselves. What did I eat? Did I get a massage? I wasn't supposed to get a massage till after my first trimester. And the temptation is to just kind of gloss over it and just kind of move on and, oh well, and not really give yourself the time or the space to be sad. People really do write off the pain and loss of miscarriage. You'll hear really insensitive things like, well, you were only pregnant for 3 weeks or 2 days, or it wasn't even really a pregnancy. I hurt with my first. I hurt maybe as much. I would say my first and my 4th miscarriages were the hardest. So you don't have to lose 5 babies to allow yourself and give yourself permission to grieve. And the main thing I learned is just that I needed to take time to be with it and to allow myself to hurt and to feel all these things and to be angry. And it was a journey for my husband and myself and our kids. You know, we think we're in control, we think we're driving, and really we're not. We need to learn to turn things over. As soon as I let go, who came? But 2 babies. I mean, how great is that? I feel like I won the lottery.
Well, Suzanne says her experience was truly a spiritual journey, one that she's sharing. She's even writing a book about it. And the biggest thing she learned was that you need to give yourself time and really be with it, and don't try to brush it off and ignore it. But how do you do that? And how do you support a friend or a family member after a pregnancy loss? What do you say to them? Psychotherapist Shelley Fidel is here with some suggestions for us. Thank you so much for coming in. I know a lot of your clients deal with pregnancy loss, so this is one of your specialties. And as I said, I lost a baby, and I don't want to cry. This is going to be hard, but 5 weeks ago. And the hardest part was just the loneliness of it all.
Yeah. And you know what? There are so many women out there, and just like that woman in the clip said, that there are so many questions that we ask ourselves when this happens. Why did this happen? Did I do something wrong? Did I drink a latte and that's caused this? And the reality is there often are no reasons at all, and that this happens. And that's really hard for us to understand, especially when we're used to being in control of our lives, and then something happens that makes us feel completely out of control. And then the additional grief that goes along with this, that we as a society, we don't talk about death in general. We don't talk about grieving, and we certainly don't talk about grieving for a pregnancy that was lost.
And she spoke about that, about how some people will say, well, you were only pregnant for a few weeks.
Yeah.
How is that really a pregnancy loss? But really, there's no timeline on how long you should grieve, and there's really no timeline on how long you should have been pregnant to consider it to be a real loss.
Absolutely, because there's so many factors that go into it. So many variables as far as like how long did it even take you to get pregnant. I see women that have done IVF to get pregnant, and here they are knowing that after this loss, this is a long journey ahead of them to even become pregnant again. There are so many different ways that we even show grief. I think that for some women it comes across as the crying, the tears, and that's a very healthy expression of it too.
Right.
You and I spoke about that, I look at people who are grieving and crying, that's healthy. But oftentimes couples will grieve differently, and that can be a real challenge when they don't understand the way the other one is grieving, because it affects men as well.
Well, we're going to talk about the differences in how they grieve versus how the woman grieves, but first, it really is important to seek out people who've experienced this, whether it's friends or a counselor like you, because, like I said, I felt so lonely because you don't get it until you go through one. Because, you know, I had a sister-in-law who went through it, and I was not there for her because I didn't understand what she was going through.
Yeah, that's true, and it's not as if that you didn't want to be there for her.
I just didn't know what to say.
You didn't know what to say, and I encourage
now
people.
I do.
Right. Well, and I encourage people, don't stay away because you're worried about what to say. A card can mean so much to somebody if they've opened up. Oftentimes, people haven't even shared that they are pregnant, so then they don't let others in. That's why there's wonderful organizations like the Solace Foundation and Share that offer online support to people, which is really nice because it can be anonymous. It can be at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep. You go to their website and they have blogs, they have all these different resources for the community, and it really can be helpful to women so you don't feel so alone.
Well, and let's talk about couples, because you're right, men don't necessarily cry, but I often hear a lot of times, because I've blogged about this, and I have men who've read my blog, you know, writing me, sharing me their story because they didn't feel like they had anyone to talk to. So they do hurt too. They just may not show it the way we show it.
Yes, and oftentimes what husbands will say to me is it's so painful to see their wife in so much pain, and they don't know how to be there for each other. Hormonally, what has gone on usually within the woman, that's substantial too, because they had all these pregnancy hormones within them, and then after the loss, their hormones, they can even experience postpartum depression without having the baby there as well, and that's just even more salt to the wound. And you don't have to have been
far along in the pregnancy to have that kind of emotional distress.
To have hormonal shifts, absolutely. So oftentimes husbands won't know what to say, and it could be that one thing is right one day and the next day it's not. So really communicating and being open about what you need from your partner at that time and what you need from your mother, your girlfriends, saying to them, you know what, I just, you know, making a dinner or bringing over a card or something like that can just be really, just be there.
So they know that you're thinking about them. And even if someone says, don't worry about it, I'm fine, after they've lost a pregnancy, still at least, you know, give them a card or something to let them know, because sometimes they think they're okay. Last week I was talking to you on the phone preparing for this segment, and I said, Shelley, I've dealt with clinical depression before, and I can't tell if that's what this is, but like I have good days, but then I'll just cry like I just did. What is that? So what's the difference between grief and when you're depressed and you need to seek help?
That's a great question, because that really is important. Oftentimes symptoms can overlap, but if they are prolonged and they interfere with your ability to take care of yourself, to do your job, to do those things, they may have moved into over from grief into depression. So you want to call your OB, call your family practitioner, and ask them if you can be seen. And I think that's really important, because we don't know much about grief, but in reality, feeling sad, crying, feeling overwhelmed, feeling angry, disbelief, those are all parts of grief that are just normal, and you have to kind of go through those steps to walk that journey till you get to on the other side.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And there is a gift in this, and Suzanne talks about it, the woman that you just saw in the story, and she's one of the many resources that we have linked to our website. So if you've gone through this, or you have a friend who suffered a loss like this, as Shelley recommends, there is a site called thesolacefoundation.org. We put a link on Great Day St. Louis's website, along with my blog, where you can read about my journey as I journaled about my pregnancy and my loss, and then again Suzanne's blog on mymommymanual.com. Carol?
Before we go on,